Well, right now, the Obama administration is still defending the controversial prisoner swap that freed Army Sgt Bowe Bergdahl, even though the military now has charged Bergdahl with desertion over his disappearance from an Army post in Afghanistan. Bergdahl was held captive by the Taliban, later traded back to the United States in exchange, as you know, for these Taliban commanders and former Gitmo detainees. The deal igniting a firestorm of controversy and some big questions about what's next. Jay Town is our guest. She served as a Marine judge advocate and is now an Alabama state prosecutor, so the perfect person to ask about this. Jay, what is next in this case? What happens next?
Well, Jenna, good to see you. What happens next is we go to an Article 32 hearing, which is sort of the civilian equivalent of a grand jury. That will be conducted by a senior officer, probably a judge advocate. And that officer will issue a report to the General Court-Martial Convening Authority, which in this case is General Mark Milley. He's the one who preferred the charges yesterday. General Milley will then consider that report, any recommendations of charges in that report. He's been charged at this point with desertion and misbehavior before the enemy. That charge list could grow. There could be several counts under those articles. We could add articles, for instance, aiding the enemy. Even unauthorized absence, or AWOL, could be added. And then it'll proceed to a court-martial where there'll be a trial before a judge or members, or, as I expect, there'll be a plea in this case at some point.
And why do you expect that, a plea?
Well, I think, first of all, a lot of this is indefensible. I think there's probably an overwhelming amount of evidence to at least the desertion charge. I don't think many of us are privy to what I'm sure is classified information that Bergdahl may have provided to the enemy, which sort of accounts for the misbehavior before the enemy charge that endangered his unit or other commands while he was before the enemy. But, you know, Jenna, we really have to give hats off to the Army here. You know, yesterday when they preferred these charges, they sent a loud message to our troops that if you're going to lay down your weapon, if you're going to leave your uniform behind, abandon your post, abandon your comrades, weaken the military posture of U.S. Armed Forces in Afghanistan, you shouldn't be welcomed home with a laurel and a hearty handshake.
Well, let me ask you about that, Jay. Let me ask you about that, because the administration obviously has come out and said many things about Bowe Bergdahl, including saying that he served with honor and distinction. So if you're Bergdahl's attorney, can you turn around and use how the administration described your client for somehow a better deal, because he's been so publicly complimented for his service?
Well, it's a good question. The answer is no. You know, his characterization of his service will be determined by a courts-martial of some sort. You know, this administration is no stranger to injecting its quote-unquote expert opinion into the justice system. It did so with Henry Louis Gaines in the Cambridge Police Department, with Trayvon Martin, with everything to do with Ferguson, Benghazi, and now Sergeant Bergdahl. That's why we let the process play out. And again, you know, the Army didn't genuflect to the political narrative yesterday. In fact, they didn't even contact the DOD with any warning that these charges were coming. General Milley went ahead with a court-martial, as he does with every court-martial, and preferred charges when he deemed those charges appropriate. So the White House's comments or Susan Rice's comments really aren't going to play a factor in this at all.
Interesting. Part of the controversy, but the end result, that's what I was curious about. Jay, great to see you as always. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Jenna.